I want to give credit where credit is due. This came from the Mayans and also from the kahunas in Hawaii. I got this from the Mayans, and it's extremely detailed, as you're going to see. And I thought that this was something that only they knew. And then later I had two older kahuna teachers, and when I just mentioned it to them, they said, oh yeah, we know about it. And then they described it in detail, exactly like the Mayans knew it. And so there's probably other tribes that understand this too. I call them the beams of light. And we're going to describe them to you, how they work, what in great detail. The kahunas told me, both of them told me that it's very, very secret. And they do it to their children. They activate it for them. We have put a lot of fear into our children about psychic abilities. You know, I mean, like, we burn people at the stake. We've done everything. A lot of the world thinks it's evil, especially the Christians, which I never could understand, because here's Jesus doing all these things. He's doing all kinds of stuff. He's bringing people back from the dead and all kinds of stuff. And then Jesus says to the Christians, all these things that I'm doing, you can even do greater things. He's giving them permission, saying, okay. And yet, at the same time, if somebody floats off the ground or something like that, then it's from the devil. I don't get that. But nevertheless, the fear has been put out there. And I really think that the children are saying, okay, mommy and daddy, I will be a good kid and I will not do psychic ability. Seal it up. They look like they're exactly the same as your breathing tube. They're like a fluorescent tube. They're straight. They're perfectly straight. But they don't look that way coming off the body. They haven't been used for thousands of years, and they're just fuzzy little things that kind of look like that. You can turn them from that into these straight beams. I'm going to draw this as though the person is looking this way, and there's a reason for it. I'll explain it in just a moment. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's the left and right side. So this is the basics of what they look like compared to somebody that's just walking down the street. If you see them all, this is kind of what they look like. Once you know how to see them, they're easy. They're brighter than the auras. But you have to tune your inner vision to them to see them. And then once you do, they pop right out and you can see them. This place where it folds, from there to the tip of the finger is the longest one. And there's some that are a little bit shorter. They fit inside of a perfect sphere. Because our head is not spherical, they have slightly different lengths. If you take your middle finger and your thumb and put it together, that is the size of your beams. It depends on the size of your hands. There's ones that come right over here. It's not the temples. We'll describe exactly where these spots are. It's back by the ears and slightly higher. It's the spot that enters in directly to the, if you were to go straight through, you'd hit the pineal chakra, not the gland, but the chakra. All of this is coming from the chakra. These are antennae. They receive images from the heart. This is the link between the heart and the brain. If you don't have these things functioning, you don't have a connection between the heart and the brain. And that was the fall, by the way. You could see the fall as falling through dimensional levels, but a real simple, more accurate way is that we were at our heart and we moved to our brain. And ascension really is just moving back to our heart. It's really, that's all it is. And the ideas of other dimensions and parallel worlds and all that are just more mental stuff associated with an external mind function. We can create anything we want. We can make this reality into any way we want to make it. The problem now is that we don't know that, and everything is just kind of going unconsciously and wherever it's going. It's not being driven in a clean-cut, clear way. There is a order that these beams have to be, when you reconstruct them, there's an order that they have to go in. And that order is, this one is number 1, this set. And this set is number 2, and this set is number 3, and this set is number 4. They also have a polarity associated with them. And this one is positive, and the opposite is negative. This one's positive, this one is negative. And this one is positive, and this one is negative. And the one on the left side, is positive, and the one on the right side is negative. These things light up. The light is coming from the pineal chakra out. Comes out this way. But there's also a flow in. It's coming both ways. But the light as it comes in is spiraling. It's rotating. Same way with your breathing tube. Light coming down is rotating one way, coming up is rotating the other way. All of these things are rotating. The light itself is doing this. When the heart is completely linked back to the brain, the way it was 13,000 years ago, a sphere appears. And this sphere is perfect. It's perfect. But it doesn't appear until these other things begin to happen that we're going to talk about. Before you get out of here, you're going to understand this completely. We're not going to leave anything out or hide anything or anything. I mean, it just takes a while because it's complicated. But interesting that once you understand this, to actually do it is not that hard. It's really easy. It's much easier to do than the Merkaba. And this is simple. Once you get it, it just kind of happens. Once you know how to set up one set of beams, the rest of them are all the same thing over and over and over. Now I'm going to talk about the inside, what's going on inside the brain. This is what happens as it leaves the surface of the skull. It's these pure, white, clean beams of light. But inside, there are these little, they come like this and they curve. And they're very organic in nature. They're very much like electricity, and they're moving all the time. They're wiggling. You know those little spheres you can buy with electrical things? You see these things going up to the thing. They look kind of like that. They're constantly changing and moving, and they come like this. They're never the same. And that's true with the left and right one too. And they're constantly moving all the time. This is what would be if the heart was fully connected with this. But that's not how it is for most people. Not only do they look like this, but the inside... Okay, this is the pineal gland. The beams, as they go, oh wait a minute, I got to put the skull in there. And the beams, as they come in, what they do is they go like this. They come down and they just go nowhere. And the other one will come over here and it'll maybe go up here. And this one maybe will come down here. They avoid, like crazy, that spot. They will not touch it. I've had a lot of theories on all of this in my life, wondering what happened and why this took place. I know that in China, when they were studying the psychic kids, this is the Chinese government and their scientific community, were studying the super psychic children. They studied them for about 10 years, and then they got freaked out by them, completely freaked out, and then switched. They went into fear and switched the other way and started arresting them all and doing all kinds of weird stuff, arresting the Taoists and the Qigong masters, and they've gone crazy now. 3 of these kids are more powerful than the entire Chinese army, and they know it. And now that they know it, they're just like they're trying to stop it, but they can't really. But it's what's happening. But while they were studying them, they discovered something, which was kind of important. They found that when the children they usually came in, they became aware of their psychic abilities when they were about 5 or 6 years old. That was the time when, before that, they didn't, nothing. And then when they got to puberty, then they just kept getting better and better and better and better and better. But when they got to puberty, one of two things happened. Either they just kept getting better and better and better and better and better and better, or it just shut off, and they couldn't do it anymore. And when they studied them, they couldn't figure out, at least the Chinese couldn't figure out why this thing happened. And it happened, but what they did find out is the percentage. It happened with about 80% of the kids. They couldn't do it anymore when they hit puberty. And this other 20% just kept going and became superhuman beings. And so I remembered that percentage and started looking around, and I found out in the United States, we have discovered through our scientific community that when teenagers go through puberty, 80% of them grow a calcium shield around their pineal gland. And calcium is an insulator. It's a soft calcium, kind of like arthritis type calcium. And it just blocks the ability to be able to do this work. Almost everybody walking around now has these things non-functioning, and these things are not touching the pineal gland, or pineal chakra rather, in this case. The gland is the one that gets sealed, but it's the chakra that works off of it, and these things are connecting to the chakra, not to the gland, just to be clear. Your job now is to get these back into straight beams and reconnect this. And if you can do that, you will reestablish the potential of reconnecting to your heart. The gland is only the source of power. It's like this is your heart chakra, here's your heart over here. There's a direct connection between the two, but they're very different, and they're both important. This is the source of this chakra, and there's some things you would do with the chakra and some things you would do with the heart. We're going from a Merkaba field, which that's out here, and the Merkaba field is intimately connected to these beams and to this sphere. This sphere here is intimately connected at this point right here to the Leonardo sphere that's in your Merkaba. There is a very direct relationship between those two. So here's what you do. And I'm going to give you the instructions exactly the way the Mayans and the Kahunas told me, which is how to do it on another person, because they do it, the way they teach you is how they're going to do it to their children. And so I'm going to give you the same instructions, but you are going to have to apply that to yourself. Here's what you do. You start with number 1, this one, the unicorn one. If you want to know where that location is, take the tip of your nose and the tip of your chin, move it up and rock over. That point right there, where I'm in right now, is this one. Okay? That's the third eye. And you're going to need to know where that point is next, or very soon. If you move that thing up to here and rock down, that will show you where the unicorn one is, which is way up here. And if you do it one more time, it'll show you where that one is. Here's the procedure. This is what you do. Again, this is on somebody else, but you do the same thing. Okay, you got a fuzzy thing here, right? You just reach up with both hands. You have to come around to the left side of the body. That's why I have it facing this way. You can't go around to the right side of the body if you do it in somebody else. It won't work. And the reason is because this beam coming out of here has a positive charge, and this one has a negative charge. And you got to use your hands, and your left hand has a negative charge, and your right hand has a positive charge. And so when you couple over the top of these, the negative hand couples with the positive, and the positive couples with the negative, and it works. It will not work if you try it the other way around. And you just grab those things, and you grab this one, and you, with your intention, you tell the body, this other person or yourself, to go into a beam. But what happens is, even though you see this big fuzzy thing and you grab it and you tell it to go into a beam, it will, just like that, instantly. But the beam will usually only be about this long. Maybe this one will be an inch and this is a half an inch or something. It'll be really short. When it condenses down into the beam, there's not much there. And and you can tell by how long they are, how much power the pineal chakra is putting out. And so you're holding them just like handlebars, like you're holding on the handlebars of a motorcycle or something. You're holding them here and you tell them to go into a beam and they will be short little things. Well, you can sense or feel which one is stronger and which one is weaker. You go to the weaker of the two and you tell just that one to put out more energy and get longer. When you're talking to another body, you can use words, the body will hear you, but you can talk inside of your head, the body will hear you just as well, maybe even better. And so you can just tell it to put out more energy, and it will do what you say, but it'll usually go like this, a little tiny bit more, because the body hasn't done this in a long time, and to it's putting out a lot more energy. But you have to say, no, more. You just keep going. And the body sometimes kind of freaks out over this. The person itself is kind of usually going through something sometimes. But all you're going to do, you're not going to pull it all the way out. You're going to just make it as wide as your palm. You just want it to do a lot more energy than what it's been doing. And so you just keep telling it, no, more, until that beam starts to extend out from the palm, and then you can just stop. And when it does, then you switch to the more powerful one, and you tell it to do it. And usually, you might have to tell it 10 times to keep going more, no more. And you get it out to approximately this long in both hands, and then that's all you got to do. Doesn't have to be perfect or super precise or anything else like that. You just get them approximately out about the width of your hands. And then you drop your hands and you put your chakra points directly over those points, right? Over the top of those points. So if you're doing it on your own hand, your left hand goes on the front and your right hand goes on the back. Now you can do this without your hands when you're doing it to yourself. You can just do it sitting and do all of it without it. You're communicating with your own body. It's very clear. But some people really need to feel, and they need to use their hands. So you put your hands over the top of your chakra, over that chakra, etc. Bam. But then the next thing you do, and this is hard to explain, hopefully you can pick this up, you close your eyes. You can see inside the body with your eyes closed. If you open them up, you see the surface or what's around it, but you can't see inside the body. If you close your eyes, and with your intention, you look to see the pineal chakra. If you do, it's usually, for most people, it shows up as red, and some people it shows up as black. For you, it might be turquoise. Who knows? But it's majority of people, it's usually red or black. You really do have two different levels of where you can see from. Once you see that, the next thing is to look to forget about all these other beams. You're only looking at this one now. You look to see these two little beams that are wiggling around there. And so you see the chakra point, and you see these little beams going like this. And now with your holding your hands over that, with your intention, you get those beams to connect to that. And they don't want to do it. And you've got to keep working with them until and a lot of times they'll connect, and they'll do it for like 2 seconds. They go, and they'll break apart and start going away. So you just keep doing it until you get them to connect, and then you've got to hold it there for, it depends on the person, but at least a minute, and maybe even 2 minutes, until you can see that they're not going to break apart. And then when you feel that they're not going to break apart, and you've got them there, then with your intention, you pull the beams out from the palms, you pull them out, and they will follow right behind your hands as you go, and go beyond the sphere, because once they get to where the sphere is, they will stop. And so you go out this far out, say, you can go past it a few inches. Won't matter. Wouldn't matter if you went that far out. Just have to get out farther than 1 hand length away from this. You pull them out, they'll come out. There's no sphere here now. There's just these two beams sitting there. And when you get them out, The next thing you do is you shift your attention to the very ends of these things, and they're pulsing. They're throbbing. So once you've pulled them out and you feel you've got to feel this pulsing, and for me, I feel it in the palms. Well, what it is they're pulsing like a ping pong match. Pulse, 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 back and forth. You don't want that. With your intention, you've got to get them to pulse the same. And so what happens is you're putting your attention in there to pulse the same, and you might go for 30 seconds, nothing happens, and then it goes through a moment of chaos, and the pulsing, which was going pulse, 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 and then it goes pulse, 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 pulse. It kind of goes crazy for a moment, and then pulse, pulse. They're pulsing the same. As soon as they are, you count the pulses. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the Mayans say you wait until you get 20 pulses. I don't know if it's because of their 2013 systems and all that other stuff, but they say 20 pulses will stabilize. I go up to like 25. Make sure. But you have to do at least 20 pulses, and when you feel 20 pulses or more on there, you can drop your hands, and this beam will be connected in here, and it'll just stay there. And then you go around to the back of the person next to get to the side beams, because that's number 2. And you get to these beams on the side. Now, where it is, again, it's not the temples, but if you go right to where your ear comes to your head, it's just a little higher and maybe just a little tiny bit in front. And so you go behind the person and you repeat what you just said. You see the little fuzzy things. If they're off center, you just pull them back with your intention, get them where they are. Feel which is weaker, get that weaker one, talk to the body, get it to come out to there, do the other one out to there. Put your hands on the palms on the person's head or on your own head if you're doing it. And look inside and see and you can see inside your own head looking with your eyes closed. and you'll see the pineal chakra, you'll see the little beams, you've got to get them to connect. Once they're connected, then you pull the beams out on either side. You do the pulsing thing again, they'll be going back and forth, you've got to stop that with your intention, get it to pulse the same, count 20 or more, and then you can drop that one. Then you come to your third eye, this beam, this level one running across here. And you do exactly the same thing. And then this one will happen automatically. And then you should not have to do this one. If you have to do this one, it's a little awkward in the sense that you have to do it here, but you can only reach this at the perineum. There's no other way. It's a long ways in, but to reach up through the tube is the only way you can get to this point because it's in the middle of your throat. And but it's not likely that you'll even see anybody in your lifetime that has to do that. But just so you know, you can't reach this point from here. You have to reach it all the way from the breathing tube at the perineum. Once these are out and running, what happens in actual practice, when you do it to someone else, is a lot of times they'll run for about 10 or 15 minutes and collapse. And you have to do it all over again. Usually, the second time will hold. And at which point, it will go for quite a while. I don't really know how long. A long time. But really this system, to get these out, you only have to do it about 2 weeks, every day for about 2 weeks, and it's permanent. It won't go away after that. But it doesn't do a lot of function, even though it's out there and running. It's very much like the Merkaba field. The Merkaba field doesn't do much until everything is lined up at once. And I used to actually find people in the audience that had really bad migraine headaches, and I would work on them, because when you do this, the migraine goes away. If you have migraines all the time, you're in luck, Because if you do this and you establish these things, you're more than likely you're going to find that your migraines stop, unless it's caused by a physiological thing, something like a tumor or something. But if it has any emotional base in it at all, it's just going to go away. They just stop, as long as you keep the beams out. Bronikov in Russia, Moscow.
In one of your books, like that is Psychic Children in Russia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what he's doing in his work. He takes blind children and teaches them to see. He takes people who are totally blind and teaches them how to read, watch television, and drive cars. And it's hard to believe, but it's true. And I've been involved with people that are totally blind. I mentioned Marianne Shinfield a long time ago. Marianne Shinfield was completely blind. She was in her 50s, but you would never know she was blind by interacting with her, because she seems totally normal. But she actually has no eyes at all. And she could see. NASA's taken her now. I'll probably never see her again. They didn't believe her. They asked her, "Where are you?" And she said, "Well, I'm actually floating around the solar system most of the time." And I'm sure they internally kind of laughed at her. And then they said, "Well, if you're really floating around the thing, then we want you to go to a certain satellite up there and read the serial number off of it." And she did. And that caught their attention. And so they use her as eyes to go out and see, because she can go to Mars or anywhere and just go right down to something and look at it and tell them what they see. And she's very good. And I've been with her I spent 3 or 4 months with her, and got to do what she got to do, and it was fun. And I learned a lot from her. But more recently, I was with the Navajo, and with one of the shamans there, and I took a group into Antelope Canyon, which is on Navajo land. You have to get their permission, and so he took us there, and he is also a shaman. And we were there with his 2 aunts, I think they were, these 2 women that were a little older than him, and so he led us through the canyon. He gets to the other side. He tells us all these stories and things. He comes in and he sings peyote songs to us. And he takes us outside on the other end, and then there's a natural-looking snake that was not carved that points to the entryway to this place. And he's showing everything, where the snake is and the eyes and all this stuff like that. And all the group is looking. And one of the aunts come over. She's got her arm around me like this. And she leans over and says, "Isn't it amazing?" And I said, "What? What's amazing?" And she says, "Oh, well, our nephew is blind. He can't see anything, but you can't tell." And so I didn't know that about him. It was funny going back after she just told me that, and he's driving the pickup truck. And I'm in the back of his pickup truck. I got a blind guy driving over the road there. Life is weird. But boy, can he see internally. When we do shamanistic work, he is the most visual person I've ever seen inside. He can appear to me better than anybody I've ever seen. But in my conversation with a lot of these psychic kids, they're pulling the energy in through the 4th and 5th lumbar, and they know it. It's coming in at 90 degrees, and it goes up straight up the spine. I don't see that anywhere else. So maybe they have some other way of linking the brain to the heart. But once we reach puberty, we have to do this.
When you're doing this to someone else, are you physically or internally seeing their chakra? Yeah. Or are they seeing it with the little fuzzies?
No, you have to see it. They don't have to see it.
Okay, so you have to see it.
You're actually doing it for them. But if you're doing it yourself, on yourself, you have to see your own. You have to see this going on inside your own head. And you can do that.
Okay.
We begin with this beam, number 1. We then go to 2, left and right. Then 3, third eye. And then 4, you don't have to do. And so the procedure is, again, you either can see or sense or feel these things. And it's easier on yourself sometimes than it is others, because you're just going to be reaching up here, right in your own head. And you grab these things. If you're not sure, just use your intuition and just do the best you can. This works on most people, even if they don't really know how. It's because of the gland that we're working with. This pineal gland is a pretty interesting thing. It functions through intention more than anything else. So you, beginning with here, you will work on this one as 1, 2, and 3. So it's up high on your head. And you need to find that spot, and you need to find the spot back here to begin with. And you need to know where this left and right one is, just right where your ears come out. It's just a little bit higher and a tiny bit forward. And if you just kind of aim toward the center of your head, you're going to get there. Remember, the pineal chakra is in the center of your breathing tube. So you're really kind of aiming for the center of everything. The pineal gland itself is just a little bit back from there. And then this spot here is just 1. You go up 1, and that's where it is. This is where your third eye is. The pineal gland should be, from what I'm being told, exactly the same size as one of these eyes, and more round, etc. The pineal gland is an eye, literally,
Right.
scientifically. It is hollow. It has color receptors inside of it. It has a lens on it for receiving light. And that is Jacob Liberman's work with light, the medicine of the future. And he's one of the most advanced people in the eyes and light in the world.
Yeah.
But it's entropy down to like a pea or something. We haven't used it. I believe that if you start using it, it's going to grow. It's going to get, just like a muscle or anything else, it's going to get stronger. But the thing is the lens is facing up this way. It's looking right up the tube. And it's designed to receive light from above. And where these eyes are facing at 90 degrees looking out this way. And so our lenses are, but it is literally an eyeball. It has other functions, but that's one of them. One of the things that when I was working with Jacob Liberman, that he showed me, which was really amazing. This guy really knows a lot about this. But they've tracked exactly when light goes in the eyes, exactly where it goes, precisely the whole method. But right after it leaves the pineal gland, it literally, according to Jacob Liberman, it goes to every single cell in the body. And he says, from the way that they see it now, every cell in your body is looking at exactly what you're looking at. That changes things about all these guys in here are looking at what I'm looking at. He says the light actually enters into every single cell.